So basically, how are you all, everybody? Energetic? Come on. Okay, good. So had I asked you, "Aap kaisan ho?" What would you have deciphered from my question? Probably, you can say it, it's fine. Probably that I am from Bhojpuri background, speaking Bhojpuri. Had I asked, आज बहुत गर्मी है, नहीं कहा? Same, similar. What I'm trying to say is, we are talking about language as a tool for social inclusion. What I just did was a means or a measure for you to probably gauge or understand where I'm from. Now, this was not a very prolific example, but it was a start. What I'm talking about today is how language affects the extent of how much you are included or excluded out of a society. So, when you talk about social inclusion, what do you mostly understand by it? It's how I am, to an extent, included in certain parts of the society. So I'd given an example of asking question in Bhojpuri. So that kind of probably means I was born or raised in or probably adapted onto a Bhojpuri culture. Had I been an English, British, or an American, or an Australian, or whoever, I would have asked you, how are you? How are you? Something like that. How's it going? And it's a saying in Australia when you say good day, which is good day. So they just say it as good AI, which sounds like good day. So what happens is when you are raised in a certain culture or a familial background, you try to you tend to adopt and accept its customs and cultures. So when we talk about social inclusion, we have to think about things that allow us to be included in that culture. Those can be anything. Those can be the way I dress. Those can be the way I conduct myself, the way I do my hair, the way I speak the language, the way I study or not, whichever, whatever. So, social inclusion is a sense of engagement or cohesion with the society, enabled or participated through and mediated by things you do. So if I go out and party after my 10th exams, that's socially acceptable and that's totally normal. Why? Because in our country, 10th exams are a big deal. They kind of decide your future to some extent. So this is one of those things which you do which is accepted, which you do which is very, very understood. 10th exams, okay, so probably the result would be okay, science, commerce, arts, something, and if he fails, this guy's probably gonna kill himself or not. That was just a joke. Anyways, so what I'm trying to say is language forms cultural and socio-economic identity. It tells you about a person, where they're from, probably where they're from, probably what they've been used to, probably they've been taught, what they've been taught. Evolutionary theorists believe that language developed as a means to communicate the skills to sustain, skills to thrive, and skills to be alive. So if I am a caveman and I want to teach someone how to make a fire, I would probably say something so that I can communicate to him or her how to make a fire. It obviously sounds very basic now because I can just tell you, take a matches or take a lighter or do whatever and just make a fire. But back in the days, it used to be a big deal. So you know how to survive by doing certain set of skills that are communicated within groups and ethnicities and races of people. And that's how language developed. In today's times, this concept, although a very basic analogy, still holds relevance. How? If I go to a place, if I go to a country, if I go to a village or a town or whichever place, I need to be able to speak the language. Or what will happen is I won't be able to read the signs on the airport, on the taxis. I would not be able to read the hotel menus. I would not be able to dial what number I have to call. I would not be able to do anything. I mean, leave apart, hold a meaningful conversation. So language helps you survive and thrive in a particular place. So what's the first thing you carry with yourself when you go someplace? You put in a camera, some clothes you like, maybe sunglasses, a nice hat, a nice shirt, anything which you think would make you feel nice in a photograph or whatever. I mean, it's something serving as a utility, maybe a toothbrush or whichever thing. What we don't realize is that inadvertently we carry our language with us. We go to a place, like I said, how are you? I could have asked you Kessen ho. And that's how you would have figured out she's from some place. Not because of the way I'm wearing my whatever I'm wearing, not because I had some things with me, not because of my bag or my phone. And that's how you would be able to relate to where I'm from. So, language is the first most important, inadvertent, yet very important thing that you carry with yourself when you go someplace. So, when someone says to you, or you say to someone, I'm so and so, you kind of figure out and place them in certain sections of the society. For example, if someone says to you, my name is Mrs. Catherine McCloss, what all things can you derive from it? It's a very simple sentence. My name is Mrs. Catherine McCloss. First thing, it's her name. Second thing, she's a Mrs., which means she's married. McCloss. McCloss is a very popular Midwest American surname. So you can place her in some parts of the world and say, she's probably from Montana or whatever. Third thing you can probably derive is that, oh, so she's married. She's definitely not 16. She's definitely not 20. And hopefully she's above 25. So these are the things that I'm deriving just from a simple statement that my name is Mrs. McCloss. And since it sounds very proper and sophisticated, she's probably educated as well. Otherwise, she would have just said, Catherine, right? That's how you figure out and place people from where they are. Problem faced by immigrants. So when we think about immigrants, mostly Westerners, and I don't want to put it like that, but white people are mostly seen as rich, affluent, entitled, and privileged. Most of it, and some of it may be right or wrong. It's not my place to comment on it. But I would just say that it's a common belief that when you have money, you have this all-access visa to things around you, to people around you, to facilities, to infrastructure, utilities, everything. And that's not true. So I've had students of mine who come to me and tell me, so I was traveling in this village of Hampi, and there was this community bathroom place. So obviously in a Western toilet, you have a toilet and then you have a tissue paper, right? A roll of tissue paper. Instead of that, there was a lota. And they asked me, what was that for? I was like, I'm sorry, I can't explain it to you in a graphic sense because that would require me to use a lot of vocabulary that I don't want to use. So that is how these cultural esoteric things come into picture. Lota would not be a word in English vocabulary or a dictionary. Similarly, machardani. Machardani. What's a machardani? Machardani, every one of us knows, is a thing that you put on a child, or probably when you're sleeping in a construction place. They want to protect themselves from the mosquitoes. This is again one of those things that is only seen and used in India. So there's a word for it. It's not mosquito net. It's machardani, right? So there are these things that you would never find anyplace else, that you have to have in a language that enables you to understand about its culture. So now I know, understanding the meaning and the usage of lota, that this is how people use the bathroom. This is how they operate. Machardani. So we don't have solid built houses in villages. So people need some things to protect themselves from the mosquitoes because there are things around them that generate mosquitoes. Similarly, chulha, chimta, right? These are all things that are not going to be available in the Western world. And hence, when these people come here and they find themselves in these situations, they're like, where are we? What do we need? Like, what do I do with this? So this is how and where I come in. I teach Hindi to the expat community, and while doing that, I don't just tell them, this is the grammar, this is the sentence structure, put it together and say something. No, neither do I tell them to say, Namaste, mera naam Victoria hai. I ask them to understand the culture. I tell them the do's and don'ts. I tell them how is it, the way is it, because what most people do not realize is that language is not just a bunch of sounds and words, it's how you think as well, it's how you behave, it's the why as to how you behave. So when they go someplace, they're not shocked or surprised or are like, oh my god. So that's where I come in. That's what I do. And through my work, I've met some amazing, prolific people, ranging from Mr. William Dalrymple, the famous British historian and author. I'll tell you a funny example. So we were doing colors, green, red, black, white. And I was sitting with him and I said, so what's green? I was just testing him. I had obviously taught him that. And deriving from his previous knowledge, he's been in and out of Delhi for the past, I don't know how many years. I'm guessing minimum 10. He says, sabzi. Now you know why, right? Sabzi is vegetables, which are always green. So whenever he goes to it, I'm sure he doesn't go to a McDonald's to eat. He goes to a very fancy restaurant, and there's some fancy name for some kind of vegetable, which is sabzi something something. So that's how he related green. So when I asked him, what's green? He said sabzi. So that was interesting for me to notice because he is obviously from a different culture. He's raised in a different place. He comes from a different country. So for him, it's very easy to associate things with what they're called. It's for us to, it's my job to break in and provide him an interface and tell him this is why it is the way it is. So that's how a language allows you to become as included and as adaptive in a new and foreign culture. How learning a local language would help you fit better. Nelson Mandela said, when you talk to someone in your language, it goes to their head. But when you talk to someone in their language, it goes to their heart. So when you talk to someone in the language that they speak, they are more likely to understand better, respond better, and definitely make a connection with you which will last more than those few 5, 6 seconds or 1 minute that you're talking. What happens with my students is they are working in places like offices, corporate, non-corporate. They are married to Indians. They have children in India who are all speaking Hindi, but for some reason they have a disconnect because they can't speak the language. So if you have a child who is raised in Delhi or Mumbai or any place else, they speak efficient and fluent Hindi, but they don't understand why their kid is behaving the way they are behaving when they go out in the market and he says, Mama bhago. They don't get it. So language helps you fit better when you are in a particular place which is so esoteric, especially India. It's not very open to change. It's very reluctant to any sort of external foreign agent. And that's why we have not adapted many things that we could have by now. And that's why we are still clinging on to our language, clinging on to the things that are very specific to us, saying them the same way that we do and not changing it. I would like to end it by saying, I'll tell you a funny example. So there is a very famous idiom in Hindi. It's called Bandar kya jane adrak ka swad. And I was trying to explain it to one of my students, and I said exactly this. A monkey doesn't know ginger's taste. And they were like, but what they do? I said, no, they don't. The actual meaning of this idiom is that if someone doesn't know what's put in front of them, they can't appreciate it. So, bandar kya jane adrak ka swad means he doesn't know how it tastes, so he can't appreciate it, no matter how much he has it or whatever. This is so culturally inbuilt and embedded. This probably originated in some villages. This probably had a folk tale to it or a fable to it, which propagated through generations. And now we know it in the form we know it, and we never question it because we just adapted it. So this is why me, you, or anyone else plays a propagating role, plays a role which is so important and imperative for these people to understand us, to understand our society, our culture, and ourselves. Thank you.